So this is a New England Colonies section. This is just a refresher of what we went over in class on Friday, I believe. Um, if you have any questions, please let me know. Please notice right here that Maine is part of Massachusetts. I said once again, it is not considered a 13 colony, so you do not need to put that on your map quiz on Wednesday. So we have New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. These are the areas that make up the New England colonies. This is a region um, in the northeast of the United States. The middle colonies and the southern colonies also make up the 13 colonies. The Mayflower is what we spent most of the time talking about, just the pilgrims. We've already mentioned the pilgrims are anybody who goes on a journey of faith to visit a holy site in order to practice religion. So the separatists are considered pilgrims. They get the nickname the pilgrims. The separatists are, much like the name actually says, they would like to separate from the Church of England. They do not think that it is worthy to be reformed. They think the only way to deal with religion is to separate and start their own religion. They originally tried to go to the Netherlands. That doesn't work out for them. They're having a hard time finding jobs as Englishmen in the Netherlands, and they don't like not being able to raise their children amongst the English culture. So they decide, forget it, we're going to go to the New World, where we can practice our religion freely. And so they set sail for the New World. They're originally supposed to land just north of Jamestown, but Captain Christopher Jones here, there's a couple stories about him. One, they say, yes, the weather was bad. The Mayflower sailing towards the east coast of the United States, present day United States. They hit a storm and it veers them off course. They end up much further north of Virginia in Massachusetts. Another story goes that people of Jamestown heard that the separatists were coming, and since they're kind of these freaky religious people that they didn't really understand very well, the Jamestown people didn't want them anywhere near them. So he actually ended up taking a bribe if he were to drop them off further up the coast. So either way, whatever story you want to believe, they end up much further north than they are expected to. Because they end up further north, the charter, that means the grant that they had to the land that was just supposed to be just north of Virginia, isn't actually valid because they're living on land that was not truly given to them. So they come up with what they call the Mayflower Compact. It's just the laws and basic setup of the Plymouth colony or Massachusetts colony. The reason they have that is because the separatists or the pilgrims are not the only people on the Mayflower. There are a lot of common folk, and the common folk don't necessarily agree with the way that the separatists want to do things. So they decide, all right, in order for us to get along nicely, in order for us to have an organized government, we need to establish something before we get off of this ship. And so they write down a few basic laws. The first one part, of course, they recognize King James as king. You always have to pay tribute to your king, whether you really like him or not. It makes them feel good. And it just says, hey, we're still going to remain loyal to you. Even though we're living 3,500 miles away, we are still loyal to you. It also promoted self-government, meaning that they had the right to make up laws to govern the colony in the way they see fit. They weren't necessarily going to be following all of the laws originally set forward. So they can design the laws to meet their needs. Fortunately for them, they ran into Squanto. Squanto is a Native American who miraculously can speak English. One of the reasons why he can speak English is because he was taken as a slave by the English. Thomas Hunt, a guy working under John Smith, not per John Smith's orders, actually takes Squanto captive. He's like, all right, I'm going to take some Native Americans captive, going to take them to Europe and sell them as slaves. Fantastic idea. So he tricks these guys into going on some kind of hunt or whatnot, enslaves them, takes them on a boat. They end up in Europe. Some very nice friars decide to take Squanto under their wing, and they help him get to England because he originally landed in Spain. He gets to England, eventually gets on a ship back to the New World or back to Massachusetts. And when he returns home from his enslavement, he finds that his entire village is dead because they have died from the smallpox or tuberculosis or a combo of both. from interaction with other Europeans that had come along the coast of Massachusetts. So this guy's life's pretty tough. So anytime we think, oh, our life's pretty tough, we weren't enslaved and we didn't lose our entire village to smallpox. So we've got it pretty good compared to him. So when the Mayflower actually arrives, they have this Native American who comes up to them and speaks pretty good English. And he's going to be the reason they are going to be able to survive. Helps them communicate with other Native Americans, shows them how to plant crops in the sandy soil, really just helps communicate overall. Oh, and the other fun part is right after they have their Thanksgiving, uh, the Pilgrims really only know Squanto for about a year because he will end up dying. Some say he was poisoned. Some say that he just had a sickness. We don't know. I'm not going to be doing an autopsy on him. Lovely picture of Thanksgiving. We all enjoy the feast. 3 days of Thanksgiving. We will be going over in class what is actually wrong with Thanksgiving, and I do have a reading for you to go over, so I'm not going to go into detail for it, but just so you know, just little tidbits about it, is that down here, Abraham Lincoln celebrates it during the American Civil War, giving thanks, and it doesn't become a national holiday until under FDR, which would have been in the 1930s, 1940s. Not exactly sure what year he makes it official. All right, so now that we have the Separatists and the Pilgrims settling in Massachusetts, what you have is the Great Puritan Migration. And this is a very creative name because guess who's migrating? That's right, it's the Puritans. And there's a lot of them. So that's a great number. So they call it the Great Puritan Migration. Really, it is the difference between the Separatists and the Puritans. The Separatists want to get rid of the Church of England. They don't like it. They want to do their own thing. The Puritans are a little bit more chill about it. They just want to purify. They want to have a few reforms happening. And so they come over in order to practice their religion freely. And so even though you have the Separatists, the Puritans are the ones that come over in droves, and they are going to be the ones to truly establish. If you look up here, just in general, at Massachusetts, 14,000 Puritans come in about, 13 years? And that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous number. Fewer are actually headed towards the southern colonies right here. You have some going to Virginia. A lot are actually going down here to the Caribbean, but many are going to New England, and this is the area we will have the Salem witch trials. So once the Puritans set up shop in New England, things will get pretty harsh before they start loosening up. You have Massachusetts Bay Colony. It's going to be governed by John Winthrop. When in doubt, think of the name John. Everybody's name's John. They do want religious freedom, but the contradiction is they only want it for themselves. So if you're Jewish, don't bother. If you're Catholic, don't bother. If you're Southern Baptist, don't bother. If you're Puritan, come on in. That's about it. It does eventually become a royal charter, which means that the King of England can make the rules for it. Originally, they were supposed to give whatever profits they could find in Massachusetts and send some of the money and profits back, but they didn't really find a lot, so they do eventually get taken over, which will be, a tiny cause of the American Revolutionary War. Not a huge one, but it does play a part. And if you look down here at number 4, this is the important one. How do they deal with people who speak out against their religion or say, hey, maybe that's wrong, we shouldn't do that? They kick them out of the colony. So once again, they want religious freedom only for themselves. And you have the freedom to think exactly the way they do. If you go against it, you're probably going to get kicked out. So have fun with that. This is just a picture of some people that are being exiled, probably for saying something like, oh, I was sick, I couldn't come to church on Sunday. Because you would get in trouble if you didn't come to church on Sunday. People would watch you. So don't think that you're going to play hooky. You had to go. All right, Rhode Island. Rhode Island is founded by these two people, Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Roger Williams is a man who believes that maybe the leader of the church should not be also the leader of the village government or the colonial government. He thinks that they should be separated, hence the idea of separation of church and state. This is actually something we practice here in the United States now, but in 1635 it was a huge deal. He made a huge stink. He also had the nerve to attack some of the Puritan laws that required church attendance and the tax to support their Puritan churches. He said there are times that you don't need to go to church, illness, disability, things like that, weather maybe if you can't make it there, and that you're not necessarily going to go to hell if you don't go to church. Well, that's blasphemous, and he gets kicked out of the colony. they do not like the fact when he says that the church leaders shouldn't be the ones making the only decisions. So he is a nice guy. He goes and buys lands from the Nangasasa Indians. He doesn't just take it, he actually purchases it, and he establishes Providence, Rhode Island, which is supposed to be lovely. Anne is a little different. She has a crazy idea that she can lead like a Bible study, that she doesn't have to listen to the older guys up in the pulpit telling her what to do, that she can read the Bible and um, have a Bible book club, if you will. They don't like that. Women are supposed to be seen, not heard in New England. So the fact that she's preaching or interpreting the Bible in her own ways, also the fact that she says that just because you go to church doesn't mean you're going to heaven, that really upsets somebody. Because go back to the idea that Puritans are required to go to church, and that in that way they will make it to heaven. She's the one who said just because you're going to church doesn't mean that you're going to reap all the benefits from it. You need to actually act the part. And I think that's what a lot of people practice today, is that you can need to show, and your actions will prove, if you are worthy. So she established this Portsmouth, Rhode Island. She has a lot of kids too, by the way, just a little side note. I think she has like 14 kids or something like that. It's ridiculous. Well, not the 14 kids is ridiculous, but it's a lot of kids. She unfortunately will end up being killed by the Native Americans. So that's a little sad note there. But hey, we still learn about her. So moving on. Connecticut, New Hampshire, I'm not really going to talk about them. They are also established because they disagree with the Puritan way of life. And that's pretty much it for New England. Then we'll move on to the Middle Colonies, where you have a lot of Quakers, lots of trade and Quakers. And as many of you probably know now, the breadbasket of the colonies. And we're going to stop there. Enjoy.